Greeting everybody, Last Outrider here with another video, and I'm here to talk about the unnumbered sons, or as I call them, the main reason I gave up on 40k fluff. So who are the unnumbered sons? Well, Archmagos Belisarius Call created who knows how many hundreds of thousands of Primaris Marines. Half of them went to creating new Primaris Space Marine chapters, and the other half created just random groups. They called them legions or armies, and they didn't have a name. So they called them the unnumbered sons, and most of these went to being used as reinforcements into the other Space Marine chapters. Sounds perfectly fine. Until I started reading books like The Avenging Sun, and then I just got to the point that Primaris Space Marines breaks 40k lore for me. You just can't suspend my disbelief enough to accept Belisarius Call and Primaris Space Marines. That really kind of made me lose interest. I mean, I waited a year now, almost exactly, to see if they were going to somehow fix this Primaris Space Marine heresy. But they haven't yet, so it looks like they're sticking with it, and they're just going to ignore the problems, figuring that, you know what, fuck it. So I'm going to tell you my basic problem with the Primaris Space Marines. Basically, it comes when I remember the first speech that Belisarius Call was giving when he was creating the Primaris, was that he wanted to use all of the gene seeds. And other people said, no, we only want to use the loyalist gene seeds, to which he answered that's an incredible waste of genetic material. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the gene seed. There was something wrong with the Primarchs, not the gene seed. And I can accept that. And then I started reading about where did he get the information to study his creation of the the Primaris. And it was, what is it? I forget the name of this little talisman that, Gilliman had sitting on his desk to give him. And Korvax got another copy of the Primarch Project directly from the Emperor's lab. And okay, I'm trying to think how to explain this. So both of these databases of the Primarch Project should be complete. What does that mean? That means that they have the data on all 20 Primarchs. All 20. That includes the 2 missing ones. Now, you may not be allowed to say their name, which is what the Emperor's decree is. Don't speak about them or remember them. But again, as Belisarius Call would point out, what does that have to do with their genetic information or their gene seeds? Now, if they have the stocks of all of the other gene seeds, there is no indication that the gene seeds of the 2 missing Primarchs was destroyed or banned anywhere. They had 2 legions. Those legions did not cease to exist. And I think the only mention that I've seen on this on YouTube is, what was it? The One Mind Syndicate gave one of their typically lacking videos about mixed gene seed legions, which completely ignores the fact of where did the 2 missing Primarch legions go. And it's been stated that those legions were folded into the Ultramarines. It's been stated several times that one of the reasons why the Ultramarines had such an advantage over the other legions is because they were 3 times bigger than the other legions. That's why instead of having a home world, they had 500 worlds. They were 3 times larger. And why were they 3 times larger? Because the 2 missing Primarch Marines legions were added to the Ultramarines. Who said this? The only one, there's 2 mentions that I remember. I remember the Primarchs talking about this. It was Horus and somebody talking about that they had an advantage. I think he was talking to Sanguinius, that the Ultramarines had an advantage because of this. And it was 2 word bearers on Calth, The Betrayal of Calth, that book. 2 word bearers, which even they refused to say the Primarchs' names, talked about the fact that they had the advantage of having 2 other legions join them. So, when other videos state that there can't be any mixed gene seed legions, there are obviously mixed gene seed legions. It's the Ultramarines. They have 3 sets of gene seeds. There is nothing with the 2 other legions wrapped up into them. Obviously, those gene seeds have continued to be harvested and continued to be used, which would mean when Belisarius Cawl went to make Primaris Space Marines, we aren't even talking about the gene seed of Traitor Primarchs anymore. Right? When he came up on the gene seeds of the 2 missing Primarchs, it's already used. They've already been in the Ultramarines for 10,000 years. So there's not even an argument of why those gene seeds shouldn't be used, which means it stands to reason that the 2 missing Primarchs gene seeds exist in the Primaris Space Marines and have been used as reinforcements for the Ultramarines and to create Primaris Ultramarine successor chapters. So we're getting real close to, I don't know, someday or in some way they're going to have to address who the missing Primarchs are. But they come and they go. Some of the writings acknowledge this. Some of the writings don't acknowledge this. It depends upon, I guess, the knowledge of the writer, of the author who's writing the story. But for the canon, if you want to call it, or lore as a whole, their gene seed must be out there. The thing that would be interesting is he fixed the flaws in the other, well, some of them he chose not to fix. So, for example, he didn't remove the Canis Helix from the Space Wolves gene seed. At least the designer, the developers realized that creating space wolves that didn't look like wolves would just be too much. But I don't see anything that's going to say they left the Black Rage in the Blood Angels. I don't think they would consider that to be useful. I don't see where it would say that they left the flesh change in the Thousand Suns, right? So those the Thousand Suns and Blood Angels Primaris Space Marines should have perfected gene seeds. And with half of the Primaris using all of the gene seeds to create new chapters, Primaris only chapters, you should easily be able to create your own new improved Thousand Suns, new improved Blood Angels, whatever, out there. And if they did, and this leads to the question then, if they did keep to single gene seed chapters, then they would just have called the missing Primarchs gene seeds Ultramarine Gilliman Sons, not naming the missing Primarchs, and just kept them as a single gene seed, but the Primaris chapters would be solely from the missing Primarchs. Or did they go out of their way to mix it with Gilliman's gene seeds just so that they can keep calling them Ultra? That wouldn't make sense. You understand what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying. The Primaris is just one step beyond what I can reasonably accept as lore anymore. It just doesn't make sense. There's no creative way to go about this. The other people, when I've talked to them, they say, well, what about the Grey Knights? Why are there no Primaris Grey Knights? Well, there's a really simple answer to that. Grey Knights are not about gene seed. Grey Knights are about training. The reason why it's perfectly capable to have Primaris Grey Knights if they survive the Grey Knight training. Grey Knights already recruited from other Space Marine chapters, so there's not an issue here. Gilliman and Call could have said, here you go, Grey Knights. Have some Primaris recruits. And the chapter master would have said, sure, no problem. We'll add them in with the next round of trainees. And if they survive, well, first of all, they need to be psychers. They need to be librarians, right? And secondly, then they need to survive Grey Knight training. And if they did, then go ahead. You've got Primaris Grey Knights. It's not about the Dream Seed. It's about the training. Okay? So I'm sure there are Primaris Grey Knights then, if they made it through training. Unless you're going to say no Primaris made it through Grey Knight training, in which case, no, there are no Primaris Grey Knights. That's the easy answer to that. I've heard the other theories about that. I'm not even going to mention them because it just makes no sense. All you need to do is be a psyker and survive their training. They recruit from other chapters already. In fact, they should have a greater chance of surviving the physical challenges because they are Primaris. But I don't know anything about whether they would be able to survive the psychic challenges any more than another Librarius. So that's how I see that. It's too much of a stretch. It just doesn't make sense to me anymore. It just doesn't. I think they really dropped the ball on creating these primary, Primaris Space Marines. It just wasn't that well thought out. Anyways, that's what I think, and that's what Primaris Space Marines are. Feel free to leave your comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.